All right, guys and ladies, welcome to Crucible venue here in Oslo. I have with me Magnus Jones. I have Morten Myrstad, and the topic we're going to talk about today is a gigantic event that happened in the crypto space about 14 days ago, where one of the most trusted entities, exchanges in crypto, somehow turned in liquid. They just basically ran out of cash. But to start with, let's see who we got here. We have Morten Myrstad. Please tell a little bit about yourself and how you got into crypto.
Well, I'm an old journalist. I've been working in the Norwegian Financial Daily lots of years ago, and I've been working as a communication person and also with internal communication. But I went into the rabbit hole about 2 years ago, so I'm a late bloomer. And I went into it via creator economy. I was fascinated by the possibility of a creator connecting with their fans without a middleman. And today I'm running a news site which is called Krypto, which is in Norwegian about Web3, Metaverse, NFTs, virtual economies.
Yeah, because you also have a little bit background from social media, and that's cool. So, and then, Magnus, how about you? How did you end up in this?
Yeah, no, I started the Norwegian blockchain department of EY, Ernst & Young, in 2015. That was simultaneously when EY also globally went into blockchain. So I'm acting there now as the Nordic blockchain and also innovation lead. So we do literally everything within the space, everything from tax and legal opinions on tokens, assisting everything from DAO structures towards more public listed entities, like for example we assisting Adidas and these type of companies on their NFT metaverse projects, while we also do fraud forensic investigations, audit, accounting, bookkeeping, and also technical development. So it's literally everything within the space.
Wow, that sounds like a busy day.
Indeed.
And for you guys that don't know me, my name is Ken-Erik. I've been around in crypto for quite some time, actually from the very beginning of the things. And I also been a front figure for the biggest Norwegian community, doing live streams, talking about everything that might come to interest for the common guy out there. And I also focus a little bit about teaching about how and when and why and things goes like that. So to begin with, for those that don't know FTX, I can. Do you want to say something, or I can start with saying that this, back in 2019, this guy, Sam Bankman-Fried, most known in the crypto space, making tons of money by exploiting what is called Himakutsu arbitrage. It basically was a price difference in Bitcoin in Japan than it was in US. And he stacked up quite some cash. He brought on some of probably most prestigious venture capital funds to start this exchange. They founded about $2 billion, I believe. And they also created what is called Alameda Research that was supposed to help innovate and support the crypto community. FTX in the crypto community, from my point of view, was actually a tiny exchange, but they had some huge whales trading. They had, if you compare, the amount of users they had in the beginning to the trading volume, it was tremendous. And Sam Bankman-Fried, he has a background from MIT. He's been trading, and the first impression from the community was that this guy, he knows what he's doing. And fast forwarding today, they adopted about 1 million users. Alameda, and they had about, I think, 134 companies spread all over the world. They had pretty tight connections to the government and the legal side in USA. And the same goes with other countries that they had established themselves as an exchange. And Alameda Research, they were basically all over the crypto space, investing in probably the most famous one, Solana ecosystem, but they also invested in NFT projects, other layer 1 blockchain. When I mean layer 1, it's like similar to Ethereum and Bitcoin. And Sam Bankman-Fried, he was at the top of the game, basically sitting with Tony Blair and the previous presidents in his famous sneakers and shorts, and basically been looked at as a genius. Then Bloomberg started investigating what was going on. And at the beginning, they didn't want to print the actual facts and numbers. And here I want to talk with you, Morten, because you are a journalist. So if I come to you with like some wow, huge news, look at these numbers, what do you guys do with it?
Well, I've been working in Financial Daily, so therefore we also look at the data. We look at cash flows, we look at the business idea, what is the proposition. And we will usually do that whatever types of companies we are investigating. But of course the problem with the crypto space is that a lot of this information isn't accessible. There's no Brønnøysundregister where somebody put in their annual reports. There's no tax authorities that look at the numbers of each company. So the problem here is transparency and of course also honesty. But I think that the story here was also that Bloomberg didn't really go for the story because they got the package from a hedge fund manager and put it on the desk for Bloomberg in August.
Yeah,
and they
on
said,
the table, here we got
on
it.
the table, here we have all the numbers, here the whole facts. And the hedge fund manager said that this guy, Sam, he couldn't be able to answer any questions. He wasn't able to answer why they earned the money, how they run the business. But the problem with media in this case was that they said, we don't want to publish the story because then we lose access to Sam. And that is one bad thing about journalists, that often you stop investigating because if you came out with a critical article, you will then lose the access. That has happened to journalists that invested Donald Trump, all kinds of stories. And in this space, I think it's a huge problem that the good journalists, they are working inside of the space. And one of them was the one that cracked the story. CoinDesk, I think it was. While the other ones at the outside, they are still writing puff stories about this guy that has been misled or something. But he's a crook.
Yeah. So Magnus, from like a legal point of view, if you, let's say, discard the recent event, what would one expect from a company like FTX operating globally?
Well, it's I think if we look at it in a way that lots of people out there right now is saying, including politicians, like 2 weeks ago, I was in Brussels discussing with some of the members of the European Commission, which is also part of sort of the crypto working group there. And they said if they had been registered here and MiCA had been in place, this could have never happened. And I do understand what they mean, and we can touch up on sort of the framework there. But regardless of that, it would have happened. Because regardless of we get MiCA or any other government sort of unified frameworks in place, you can still register legally an entity at the Bahamas, in Cayman Island, in Cambodia, wherever you would like to, where you do not necessarily have these rules, which includes them. So in the FTX case, they did not do anything illegal compared to where they were registered with the main entity. Like you said, they had lots of entities also in Europe as subsidiaries or sister companies in the system, but they were not obliged to have a full audit in the way that we think of an audit here in Norway, but they had 2 auditors in there, and they were fairly small audit firms in general, and they gave opinions on something, and they gave sort of a partially audit, but it looks like an audit, but they only comment on specific things, not the whole perspective. But the first sort of red flag that you can see there is when you have 2 audits firm in a company that is by accounting years 1 year old. That's clearly a red flag there just as a start. So I think in the setup there that it looks sort of from the outside legit because they're following the rules, and I think it's more the, call it, euphoria around it, who he was connected to, who his parents was, etc. All of these connections that sort of drove the trust. But I think we're more than happy to discuss sort of the legal frameworks and part and everything that comes up. But to sort of summarize in this way that it's more of the setup that made this work from him. And as I say, regardless of if you are into crypto or into whatever utility of selling bananas or Tupperware or whatnot, if you sort of have some auditors that apparently gives you a okay report, and also it is said without confirmed that, you know, legal teams also here were given advice that appears to be sort of into it in some kind of way. So if you have legal advisors with you, you also have auditors, well then you can commence a fraud for minimum a year, pretty easy, I would say. But I would rather raise the question back again to all the VCs, because there were de facto lots of very profile, high knowledgeable VCs
and
that
knowledgeable. They had so good experience.
Exactly. So I raised questions about the vetting process that they did when they went in, and that's why I'm saying I think they more saw the whole euphoria around it without actually doing what they're supposed to do. So I think we're not even close to see sort of the end of what will be disclosed in this case.
So basically, so the journalist didn't raise the red flag, and the, let's say, those who supposed to know, VCs, they didn't even raise the flag, different reasons. And then comes the incredible question, how can, like, a person like me actually gain the trust of a crypto exchange perhaps in a similar manner like a bank? So what is the difference between, let's say, a bank, which we are trusting, I assume, and a crypto exchange? Could you roughly, just without too much?
No, but I think that's the same way as you have banks are operated and organized in different ways, in the same way as de facto crypto exchanges are also. And it's down to a nature that we are grown up by just the trust of a bank in general. And of course there are more mechanisms in place in an ordinary bank, in civilized countries at least, and I would say most of the world anyway, where you are having internal audits, external audits, and a more secure system that picks up this one on a running basis, which were not required in a crypto exchange in that jurisdiction that they were located.
I think one of the problem here is that FTX was not only an exchange. They were a hedge fund, they were a market maker, they were also the one that ran the FTT coin.
Yeah,
So
their own token, just
yeah,
to clarify to the
their
viewers.
own
Yep.
token. So they sat on every position around the table. And when things go up and the greed is there, and you have, for instance, lended money, you have the gearing effect. Everything goes up. But when it turns the other way around, it goes as fast, but then the other way. So it's sort of a domino thing happening. And all the business had an effect on all the different types of business, and also all the other companies that were around them that had lended them money. So I think the problem is also that if you compare it to stocks, you have Oslo Børs, you have Nymex, you have Nasdaq and whatever. They are stock exchanges. They are not investors. They are not venture firms. They are not hedge funds. So you have to have different kinds of regulations and different kinds of business ideas. So it's possible to see what is an orange and what is an apple.
So basically, when you look to an exchange, you will probably look for something. So what will give you trust is that you will look to an exchange that doesn't mix up with investing and custodial and just doing it. I see. But it's interesting that you mentioned the FTT token, because I'm not sure if we can do a direct parallel, but let's take banks and fiat and lending, and we take FTT tokens, which has a market price, and they borrow against their own token. But doesn't the bank basically do the same thing, because they lend out money and take security in the house, and the exchanges, they make a token that has, let's say, an ecosystem and a use case. Not maybe it's as secure as a house, but in a similar way. So does that mean that we probably can't trust banks as much? We have banks that Credit Suisse is in deep shit this week, I read. They're out of cash as well, same way as FTX.
Yeah, no, as mentioned, banks are operated in different ways. But, you know, like you say, money is printed out of thin air, and most people don't understand that the banks actually just create the money out of thin air, literally. While they have a system where it's set up towards their equity and the regulation in the specific countries that they're in, that they're not supposed to be able to issue more than the part that they are secured for, sort of saying. So there's a more safety mechanism there compared to, like, you know, whether or not it's Sam or it's you who can issue a CTT token for that sake and try to do something similar. He could do whatever he would like to. He was the central bank, he was the financial authority, sort of saying, also in the same role, he controlled the whole thing. And that's the challenge there in itself. And I think that's also one of the challenges in general for why people were not able to see what was going on in so clear context, because what you referred to was the subsidiary Alameda Research. And Alameda, they had disclosed, allegedly at least, all their wallets to Nansen, the Norwegian clustering company, where you could go in and see exactly how many dollars they had. $238,337.6 in DeFi right now. They were disclosed. But that doesn't prove anything in terms of that you don't have any general ledgers from the original company to match them against. And when it's said, at least, Sam chose a wallet structure where he apparently combined both personal and quite a lot of different structures into different wallets, where there was no clear pattern towards this is company wallet, this is mine wallet, this is Alameda wallets. And then you see sort of that the different tokens, not only the TTT token that they had there, but also other assets classes suddenly moved from one to the other without sort of making any sense. And I think that's a challenge for a VC coming in, because you don't understand it, but you sort of see the setup and you sort of see the facade, and then you might just conclude because you don't have mechanisms in place already for what you're investing in. And I believe some of them should have had it and they could have cleared it, but as mentioned, when you don't have an accounting year and an annual report to look back to, it's difficult. Then you have to be in there, see it hands-on, and in the moment you're in, it might appear better than what it is de facto the next day.
Yeah, and maybe they didn't, and that is a thing in crypto space, like similar to all the people coming into crypto, the companies and the VCs, they have a general lack of knowledge as well, you know. Maybe they don't know how to do audit on blockchain wallets, and maybe they don't have the capacity to actually do those checks, so they have to, in a similar way, like people here investing in crypto. But so from a journalistic point of view, what would you look for in a healthy exchange? And then I will have Magnus getting the correct.
I think we are moving forward towards some kind of regulations, and of course it's not easy to do it in a fast way because people are still asking, what is a token? Is a token, is it a security token? Is it a utility token? Is it a non-fungible token? Is it meant for payments or whatever? So we are still in a landscape where it's hard to differentiate the different use cases. But I think that we have to accept and move forward to more regulation, and more regulation that gives more transparency and also gives more support for the smaller the investors. And maybe there will be different kinds of laws. For instance, in the traditional finance, you can't do private banking because you are a private bank. You have to do some auditing, and you do have to do some explaining how you do your business. So there are different kinds of business ideas and different ways to do it. The problem right now, I think, is that you have a crook, but he has made a problem for the whole industry. I think it's Torbjørn Bull Jensen in Arcane. He says that finance has come into crypto. And instead of solving the problem, which Bitcoin and the other coins should do after the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy in 2008, we have had the same kind of crashes in the Bitcoin space or in the crypto space.
So you compare Lehman Brothers crash with FTX, but this is the financial world, and
yeah. Instead of solving the problem, the whole industry has created the problem. And because we have been more geared about the euphoric possibilities of earning money instead of building solutions, building apps, building things that could mean something for people, I think we are on our way there. I see more utilities now. I see more, for instance, in the commerce in the metaverse. I think it will be huge, where you can use digital twins and sell a shoe, which is just an object in the metaverse, but you can sell it and deliver it in the real life. That's just one example. Payment is another one.
And Magnus, so you know a little bit about the laws that we have today. Could you explain to the people, like, what do they actually have today, an exchange, as a consumer, small retail investor? What kind of safety mechanism do you have? We know here in Norway there are some laws, and maybe they are a little bit more stronger than in, let's say, other parts of the world. But can you just generally say the pros and cons to begin with?
In general, people have been, the easiest way to deal with something when you don't fully understand it and you see some noise is just to shout, regulate it. But it's rather, I have heard very few who have said in the same sentence, regulate it and do it by doing so and so. It's rather just regulate it, someone has to deal with it. So it's not an easy task. So I would like to sort of stress that even as much as I believe that, I would say authorities in the world in general are trying their best within the frameworks they have to work. So I would not go and address, as many people do, go and take tax authorities directly or financial authorities directly, because it's the Ministry of Finance that has to take the decision and say, guys, we will give you this much of amount of money, we'll give you these resources, so you can actually build this knowledge further. They have not taken that position. So I would rather raise sort of a red flag towards all jurisdictions out there who has not done that from a government top level, and instead they have said, oh, let's hope this thing will disappear. And I would say that we have, is it one thing that we have in the world today? It's enough laws and rules and regulation in general. We have lots of them. And they are dealing with, you know, the traditional market very well, I would say, in general. Today. And of course, we have applicable laws. So if you understand the mechanisms of what this is, you can find an applicable law. But an authority will never be able to use that law as long as they don't understand the mechanisms. And that's the challenge. So that's why we at EY, we have been given advice within this landscape since 2015. That's not just taking the finger in the air and say, we believe it's like this. It's because we are certain that because of the interpretation of the law, that is what is the current legislation that will be applicable. And that's the balance that you have to go further. So if you look into sort of the current situation in Norway and in most other jurisdictions, the main focus from governments is rather anti-money laundering. That's sort of there. Terrorist financing, money laundering. That's the main case. So we have a directive on anti-money laundering that is in place. That's the reason for why exchanges in Norway has to register with the financial authorities there. And that's only a registration obligation where the financial authorities ask the exchange for all their mechanisms, their routines, their systems, their backup, and that's down to a detailed level of what type of software you're using actually to secure that that is in place. But they don't look specifically into whether or not you have the funds on your account, how you deal with it. If you have it in one wallet, in 140,000 wallets, if you swap between them, that's not covered by sort of the rules today. And I think that's where we have to move into a position where we have more unified frameworks, because in the same way as, you know, when you go to your bank, you just trust it. You don't know everything. You don't do a due dil on the bank in general.
Yeah, you can't.
And in the same way, you should not you should not have to do a due dil on the exchange. So I think you're totally right, Morten, that regardless of how much it can interfere with sort of the main principles in general of crypto, that you want to have this out of a third party. If we are to acquire these cryptos from an exchange, we have to have a framework of regulation and rules in place that will be sort of the benchmark. And that's what we're working on now with MiCA, Markets and Crypto Assets, coming up. We have something called CARF, Crypto Assets Regulation Framework. We have Digital Service Act that is in there. And we also have FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, that gives guidance on this one. And
FATF also is more like global?
They're global advisor within financial things within the industry. And then it's also that we have something called DAC 8 that goes on tax and legal frameworks, how governments are being able to extract data from exchanges. And it was also a leaked document now last week from the European Commission that said that now they will give fines of minimum 500,000 euros to the exchanges that do not deliver information about wallets and wallet owners when governments come in and request it. So I think we will see that coming more and more up, and also maybe even here that it will be not only voluntarily to disclose your wallet address when you hand in your annual tax return, but it will be mandatory, and thereby you can more or less control the system in a totally different way. Because if government sees a project that they believe is not legal or within the category of illicit, they say, this token is illicit. They go in, can check whether or not you have it. And if you do this for business purposes, your accountant will definitely say, I cannot accept this one, sorry. And then you sort of move the industry in general forward. So there's lots of frameworks that will come in place, but they will not be, of course, complete. It's rather that we have to also remember that what we're building today is not something that is regulating the current market. It's actually trying to regulate the 2017 market of ICOs. So that's kind of ironic to the whole setup.
And that is Asia, actually, that they don't come running on. But you had something?
Well, I think the problem is also that the different parts of the society hasn't talked together about these issues. You have the crypto communities trying to avoid regulations, I would say, hoping that nothing should happen, and pushing forward with buzzwords like decentralization and whatever. but a lot of them has wanted not any kind of regulation. And on the outside of the crypto industry, you have, well, recently you have the institutions that are moving in, so that is maybe a new sign. So they will also take part in the discussion. But for instance, journalists and politicians, they don't understand anything of what's happening. And instead of trying to understand it, they are just taking, they feel that they have to hope it will go over. And we were at the conference from Norges Bank some weeks ago, where there were 100 people trying to find out how will the new digital Norges krone be. CBDC, or digital money, which they call it in Norges Bank. And one of the speakers asked, are there any politicians here? There were none. So there were technicians, there were society people, there were financial people. And this is going to be discussed in the Stortinget next year. But they have to start investigating, they have to start to understand. And we in the crypto industry have also be inviting them and open the conversation.
I just not to make too much noise, but I disagree a little bit regarding your introduction there, where you told different projects and exchanges trying to avoid regulations. Since I've been around for some time and seen what's been going on, I have been seeing many serious people trying to actually make a good exchange, but they stumble into project troubles like, you can't get a bank connection, you cannot get fiat on off ramp. Just look at even some of the biggest exchanges like Binance. They have been fighting for 2 years to get a SEPA on off ramp in UK and Europe. And basically what they had to do was that they had to buy a bank to get around the topic.
Just a correction, not only the exchanges, I'm talking about the whole crypto community, where there's a lot of people that are arguing that there should be no regulation.
But I think we see it very clearly. We also that in terms of, as you said, Morten, from, call it the old days within this industry, that's more than 5 years ago. That's old days. And
I'm only 2 years old.
Yeah, and there were a joint presentation, maybe, like you say, oh, it's totally decentralized, it's private, it's not traceable, we run the show now, sort of thing. While, like you say now, we have people who comes to us, including Norwegians, who is building DEXs, decentralized exchanges, apparently within this same mindset of sort of the freedom of movement of whatever it is, but they come to us because they want to do it legally. Otherwise, they would just have moved to Bahamas and taken an apartment that is up for rent now and moved down there. But they come to us because they want to pay their taxes, they want to pay the employment fees, they want to do it correctly, and that's a change that we see. So my impression is also that in general, also from working deep inside the DeFi community, is that these players, they are taking it seriously. When you see projects like Ava, which is known out there, they have legal compliance officers. They are addressing systems and setups. They are using system setups for example, Chainalysis, a clustering company, tracing company, which is KYT solutions by Know Your Transactions there. They're taking measurements in towards, building this one. So I think we should also remember in this setting here that this landscape is not fully developed. And I think lots of politicians think, oh, let's regulate it with 4 corners, while we are not even close to setting one cornerstone in this landscape.
Missing a wall.
So when we might come up with, call it a good framework for some regulations of an exchange right now, which is sort of timely in the matter of the FTX case. But have anyone thought about then what, for example, exchanges out there are thinking about? Because they are applying for e-money licenses, and they are applying for banking licenses. And when they receive e-money and banking licenses, they can issue financial products in the same way as within banking, only by using crypto. Think about that noise when that comes up, when they can build their own DeFi protocols. Then we don't have that regulation that will apply unless you're able to interpret the current rules that even are existing or will be applied. And that's the challenge. So it will always be sort of a catch-22 around the whole thing there.
Yeah. Before we have an audience here for this pod and stream. 2 minutes just to round up this scenario. So what basically we are seeing now in the crypto platform, it's exchanges globally all over the world. Doesn't matter if you have been proof of reserve and proof of this and that and have SAFU fund and backing here and there. People are losing confidence in the exchange world, and people are running into self-custodian wallets. Just do you have any thoughts regarding that? Is it a stupid idea, or is it a good idea to, or is it the only solution out there? What do you think?
No, I don't think there's one solution towards saying go hot or cold in the storage way, because it's down to your knowledge and how you deal with it. Because you can fall into lots of pitfalls if you try to store this thing yourself. And we have had one Norwegian client who actually was using Bitcoin as a collateral within a business agreement. Bitcoin for around 9 million Norwegian crowns. And he called me up the day before and said, what kind of wallet should I use here? I'm looking at this, should I have it on my computer? Should I have it on the phone? Or do I need to engrave my wedding ring and have the codes there? What do you recommend, Magnus? And I was like, have you ever done this before? No, I'm just reading about it now. It can't be that hard, is it? It's just a code. Or should I print 2 notes and have them in 2 different bank books and put plastic around them, huh? Or like I said, or should you maybe go to Norwegian Block Exchange, who will give you a good OTC deal? They have insurance, they will secure your funds. Yeah, what if your ledger crashes, actually? Could happen. Yeah. That's a risk. What if your house burns down? What if it's a water leakage? What if what? Okay, maybe makes sense. But then again, it's down to the infrastructure and understanding this one. Because what he did was he followed the advice, he went to NBX, acquired it there, everything was fine. But he also was invited to the counterparty, say, hey, come to Barcelona, meet us there. And the counterparty, they said, oh, good, you have it on your wallet. Yeah, but we just need proof of that's your wallet. So if you are just kind to send us the amount of $1 from that account so we can see that's your wallet, that's good. So he was like, oh, just open your phone, place his phone on his phone, skimmed the phone by doing that, and he could walk out of the meeting seeing that, oh, there goes 40%, 20 more, 20 more, 20 more, and suddenly everything was gone. So that's down to the security levels of understanding how to deal with it. So it all depends on, I would say, the amounts you have, whether or not you're using it for continuous investments, or if you're sitting long-term, and how you can rig it up. But I would at least say as a recommendation, never just have sort of your private keys tumbling around on a piece of paper, but put it into a context in the same way as the ones that are old enough to remember when we stored pictures at the hard drive disks, that you had a backup of that one and you stored it in some safe place from fire and water in addition. So if you cannot handle that, I would rather recommend to have it on an exchange, but it's down to sort of the level here and also the setup that you have to do in terms of, is the exchange running bankrupt? Your funds might be very safe and secure, but what are sort of your rights there? And that's sort of an uncleared issue right now. So there's always pros and cons. So I think it's the boring answer. It depends that you will always get from a lawyer.
You should send him a beer from me, because if he had a 9 million on his mobile wallet, Lightning, that's a Dagon play for sure. What about you?
Well, I'm not a wallet expert. I'm not a crypto expert. I would say my recommendation would be to talk to Magnus, or perhaps talk to Torbjørn or some of the other exchanges in Norway. They are working with different kinds of security arrangements, vaults, and I think just another day there was the Ledger has launched a new hard wallet where they had designed it. The designer came from Apple. He decided the iPod. 10 or 15 years ago. And I think that maybe we are moving towards the iPad moment or the iPhone moment, where things are getting more the better user experience. So you have to build and invest in companies and consultants that you can trust, but at the same time you have to continue to believe in the space. But then you should build, not speculate. You should build, because there's a lot of use cases out there that are eager to find a solution.
Yeah. So basically, to sum it up, I can say that if you have the technical skills and really know how to do this, and have seen perhaps several YouTube videos,
two,
you could experiment and try out using a self-custodian wallet like MetaMask and Ledger, cold storage.
And just to mention, since you mentioned MetaMask, just as an anecdote towards it, what people tend to forget there, because MetaMask, for the ones that doesn't know it, is de facto the most popular, I would say, call it Web3 wallet out there, regardless of it's crypto, if it's NFTs, or you're moving into Metaverse sphere. And everyone is sort of going MetaMask. But who runs MetaMask? That's a consultancy company called Consensus. That was created by one of the founders of the Ethereum blockchain.
Yeah.
And they assist governments and everything, and they're legit, not a question. But on the other side, there's a little bank called JP Morgan who bought into Consensus, who has a controlling of a view of MetaMask. So we should think a little bit about metadata towards that is stored there, and where they also now just, was it last week? Where they were saying that they were using identification methods towards that wallet. So of course, like you say,
metadata and what kind of stuff you did.
Yeah, so I think we should be aware from that picture also to fully understand it, and don't go blind by just following whether or not it's Telegram or Discord or Twitter advice that we see, unfortunately, lots of people just following the chain because someone has said it.
Yeah, so that's cool. So we have an audience here. Is there anyone that has any questions for the panel? You can just raise your arm. I don't know if you have.
Do we need a mic for them? Then?
Maybe an extra mic. Do we don't have? Okay, I will go directly.
Take this one.
Oh, then I will
just bring this one. If this question.
That's cheating. Have this girl over here. Hello, welcome. What's your question?
Thanks. Hi, I'm Jana from Startup Norway. I have a question. Where do you see the effect of FTX collapse on local exchanges? So it looks like there's been a huge outflow. Theory, like AUM jumped 5 times. Do you think it's temporary, or is it going to stay? And then if it's more prevalent that people would move from global exchanges to those like much more regulated in local markets, much more affiliated with the tax authorities and so on, what are the challenges and limitations with that state then?
Can you start, Morten, as I need a mic, I think, back.
I think there was a story about Firi, this is, and also yesterday I think that they said that they have reduced their net loss with 80% because they have inflows. I think that can be a really good business concept. And it seems like at least the 3 large Norwegian exchanges, MBX and Arcane, which is maybe more now being called K33, and Firi, they are moving with a little different strategies. 2 of them are working more for the institutional investors and 1 of them for the retails. But all of them are trying to be MiCA compliant before MiCA comes. So maybe they will be 2017 compliance, as you say. But I think they still seem to be seeing a business possibility. So it's good compliance is good business.
And I personally believe that literally the majority of the masses have no clue what to do. And I think they just follow whatever I said is tweeted within your follower group and do whatever it is. And it's like, don't trust Coinbase. I've heard the same rumors. Oh, I heard it. Don't trust Binance. Don't trust whoever it is. It's much more secure. Take it here in Norway. And of course, you never know, because there's very hard to get sort of the insights of whether or not it's Binance and Coinbase or Kraken or whatever. But on the same way, you don't have the full insights in any of the Norwegians one, but it's more of a framework that is more secured here because we have something on the financial authorities and the setup and the security level. So I would not be personally afraid to have it in any of these exchanges at all. But I think, unfortunately, that people just tend to follow the masses without having any critical thinking. And that's just down to, you see the example of FTX, who invested in it. They were just following the others because it was one to the other, to the third, to the fourth, to the fifth large company that was in it. Oh, it must be legit. So I think some of the smaller ones can have a renaissance right now. But my gut feeling is in the long term that when you see that actors, like JP Morgan, they're going into the space. And they're not stupid. They have very smart people and they have quite some funds also. And they understand sort of the mechanisms of who they have to acquire. So I wouldn't be surprised that some of them will take advantage of where the market is currently today and position themselves to sort of see the growth of the market in general. Because I think people should not underestimate, even though, if you go in and see, for example, the metaverse office of JP Morgan in Decentraland, where you have a tiger that walks around in the reception and you have a picture of Jamie Dimon on the wall, and you have a Q2 report from 21 that runs on the screen on the second floor, but you cannot go to the second floor because you cannot walk stairs. That's sort of the concept of why. But they have a plan around it that goes a bit further. So I would be personally not surprised if we see more of the established parties going into this one, from not the main entity, but from subsidiaries to invest even more.
And to comment like in a short-term perspective, if you can say like that, for sure we haven't seen the real ground zero effect of what's going to happen in the crypto space regarding Alameda Research and FTX Exchange. Just to give you an example, we had the Terra Luna crash in May, and there are still companies out there that is basically technically insolvent. They don't tell anyone, and those that had to tell, like BlockFi and those companies, they fall, like 4, 5, 6 months later. And this magnitude that we are, if you compare FTX with Terra Luna, FTX is like 10 times bigger. So the ground zero effect in short term, we probably won't see for maybe another 6 to 8 months, I think, for sure. It's going to be severe for sure, unless you have some very nice gentlemen putting up a lot of cash. Is there another person?
You believe CC will come in and save
maybe
us all?
CC will do it. Let's hear this guy over here. Hey, what's your question?
Hey, my name is Gaute. You're talking about FTX, and I heard in the media that a lot of them, they use the word DeFi on FTX. But my understanding of DeFi is more of SUSI swap and those kind of things. What do you think the effect of FTX collapse would be on that kind of decentralized finance?
You want to try? Go first?
Yeah, sure. No, it was in that context that, as far as I've understood from FTX, it was rather Alameda Research that was also investing in lots of DeFi protocols, either by hard cash money, but mainly in the tokens, i.e. governance tokens specifically also, i.e. tokens that gives you sort of a voting right there. And that was sort of in the same way that you mentioned with BlockFi, that they used BlockFi also as a mechanisms to get rewards, because BlockFi had a great product running. You get 4 to 6% interest with sort of a careful investment portfolio. And if you're running FTX and Alameda and you have this amount of money and you need to sort of get the wheels running, you get 4 to 6% interest. It's brilliant. So I would say that the DeFi part there is not, in my view, destroyed in any kinds of way. But it's also not, definitely in my point of view, not the way that lots of people are saying out there. FTX was not crypto. And by the way, DeFi is all going to save us now. DeFi was not interrupted with it. It runs perfectly well. Of course it interferes, because we have to be realistic towards DeFi also, that it's not decentralized. It's not decentralized at all. It is physical links to persons within the system. You can claim it's decentralized, but it's definitely not currently, because you also have, you set up a thing like a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, and unless you put it onto the blockchain and deploy the smart contract on the blockchain, so it's what I call a real DAO, most DAOs, they are what I call a fake DAO, where you have a DAO foundation. You have some people working in it. You can update, you can amend the code, you have a DAO treasury, you have someone who controls it. So if Ken-Erik has the keys, or maybe we have a multi-sig key, we might just say, let's go to the beach and take a picture and say, hey, suckers, so long. That's DeFi in a nutshell. And if you look into the fact, though, where we have most frauds, hacks, rug pulls, and scam in the world today, you cannot just go out and say, DeFi was not affected, DeFi will save us, because that's the factor where it is. If you look into a party like Chainalysis, the clustering company, like governments all over the world use, they identified last year that it was 0.15% of all crypto transactions that related to illicit activity. And that's within the framework of children pornography, terrorist financing, and all of these things. But in that chunk of that 0.15%, almost 80% relates to DeFi hacks and scams and rug pulls. That's the majority of the thing. So I think we should be realistic and also see that market, that will definitely evolve much more. But we also have to remember, crypto market, we are 350 million owners maybe in the world of crypto today. Well, I would say active users, correct me, maybe 200 million or something.
Yeah,
ish.
or less,
Yeah.
Shy.
While DeFi, how many are we? We are 5 million wallets globally, 5 million DeFi wallets.
Yeah.
So that means we're not even 4 million unique DeFi users. So we have to be a little realistic to who is in there and who is dealing with what and how transparent is it actually. So I believe personally that the mechanisms of DeFi will become the future of finance. But currently we have, to say it straight out, too many fat fingers in the code. And that's down to the fact that there's not enough persons in the world that knows to do smart contract reviews and analysis of them. And then you just trust a friend here or there to do the review, because you can either afford it or you don't have time to wait for the 18 months that is out there in the world today to get the people who actually knows it. And then you just deploy it. And thereby there's errors. And not necessarily errors in the code in itself, but it's rather that they haven't understood fully the mechanisms of traditional finance. Because if you have one other smart guy that comes in and say, oh, I'll just make this product, I'll place it on top of your protocol with the Lego bricks, and then I can drain your liquidity pool by doing it legally also. That's the challenges of DeFi in a nutshell. So I don't believe it's damaged or destroyed in a context at all, but I foresee lots of challenges also coming and arising in that landscape going further.
And I can also add on. So if you look at on-chain, you see a lot of outflow of tokens from the exchanges. Some of this is actually going into decentralized wallets and being used in the DeFi space. So there is, when it comes to trading volume, it actually increased after the FTX crash.
Yeah, you saw Uniswap, for example, peaking.
Insane volumes. But on the other hand, you also have this mechanism that a lot of crypto projects that are now in short of cash, that have been liquidity provider to the DeFi space, they are withdrawing their liquidity. Just look, for example, on Solana Bridge, to give an example, where they in 48 hours lose basically 80% of their liquidity. So it has consequences, but as Magnus says, there's nothing, let's say, wrong with the smart contract or the blockchain. It's working and it's going on strong.
Well, the problem is that in the crypto space and the blockchain space, it's not only the Luna or only the FTXs that has run the business bad, if you could say it like that. We have Ponzi schemes, we have leakages, we have different kinds of bad behavior. And if you are looking at the trends going up, we had DeFi as a booming in 2021. We had NFTs booming in 2022. Then DeFi more or less had a slow downfall. And now again, NFTs is depressed. And we are looking what will be the next use case to bring people into the crypto space. Will it be gaming? Maybe it will be, because there are 3 billion people that are already using games, and there are already exchanges also some kind of coins or also tokens inside of the games. But I think that maybe to get to the 1 billion people in this space, I think we also have to be more open to the Web 2 space, if you understand what I mean. Because on the back end, the blockchain is superb. On the front end, it's not. So you have to mix competences. And it seems like the fashion industry, social like Instagram, a lot of companies are now experimenting with the mix of front end in Web 2 with back end in Web 3. And that will be the way going forward, I think.
Just one quick comment also, because you mentioned that NFT market sort of is bust. But I would just like to make sort of a correction, since we're talking a little bit about current market systems there also. And that's down to that, yes, in general in the media, the presentation is there. But if you look into the month of November, what happened there? If you look into Web3, NFT, and Metaverse connection, well, we had Pores coming out. Yeah. We had Reddit. We had Adidas doing a new launch. We had Nike going with .swash. We had Ublot going out with their solution together with FIFA. We had Messi. We had Ronaldo. And we had also Volkswagen going in there, and Skoda launching their tokens. So there's some tension that runs behind the scenes that is not so clear out there, that is clearly showing that there's a momentum that lays there. But the thing is, again, what we talked about, that how large of the market is it out there for NFTs? And NFTs, there's 2.5 million wallets approximately in the world who has NFTs today. So there's a very small market. So thereby it's not picking up that kind of attention, but we see the brands and the momentum and the push. And I think that's a very relevant thing to take into consideration to see how the growth goes, like you say, how we're reaching 1 billion, whether or not that's going to happen within 2 to 3 years as estimated, or if it's going to take 5 to 6.
Yeah. Could I correct myself a little? Because of course right now I was more tabloid when I'm writing.
I know you know it because you have written the articles.
Yeah, and this was the headline, because there's also a lot of other use cases coming out on NFTs. Starbucks is launching a loyalty program with NFTs. I think someone said before we came here that this event could be run by an NFT membership token. And the same membership token could give access to Discord or could give access to other kinds of services. So ticketing or membership solutions is growing really, really fast. So NFT has a great future.
We have time for 2 more questions, and I saw this hand over here. Hello.
Hi, I'm Beatrice. So my question is surrounded around, after FTX, you saw a lot of exchanges rushing to do their own proof of reserve. And my question is, do you think that's enough? Because that in itself became very problematic when people were borrowing or lending their tokens off of each other and trying to seem like they were safe, but that in itself became a problem.
Magnus, you want to go first on this?
Yeah.
It's a good one.
No, proof of reserves is sort of the hot topic discussion now. And like I mentioned, Alameda, they actually had their proof of reserves. They disclosed all their wallets to Nansen, so you could follow them. I've followed them. I watched them. I have some print screens that I used for illustrations previously where they are on top because they're the one that invested most. But as long as you cannot match it towards the general ledger, it doesn't help you a thing. So like the event both of us were now just before we came up here, Stig Kjos Mathisen, the CEO of NBX, here in Norway on that exchange. She said, well, we have proof of reserves, but be honest, you know, and realistic, it doesn't tell you everything. It's a step in the right direction towards it. But maybe if you would have, like he has requested for a long time, you know, internal audits and had a focus on, you know, someone who is willing to go in and say, well, we confirm you have this amount of fiat, we have this amount of this token, and this token. Well, this is what is placed out there in this market. And then it gives you the trust, because you have to match these numbers towards something. So I think we see lots of, call it buzz right now. If you look into the model that Nansen has built now for proof of reserves, we see more and more coming in because you have to do it, but it gives you a fair picture, but not a full picture. But a step in the right direction, clearly.
Sure. We have time for one more. No, I'm okay. We've been talking too much already. Then I would like to say thank you so much, Magnus.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah. We can be speaking about this for the whole evening for sure. And there are a lot of topics that we're not going to cover on this one. But this podcast here and this stream that we are putting out on YouTube, this is the experiment now. If you find these topics and the stuff that we try to at least dig into interesting, make sure to follow on the social media for Crucible. And we will try to do this, at least with me, once a month forward. So with this, thank you so much for attending, and to you guys, thank you for listening. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.